Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Rapid Devotionals with Ryan. Today I just want to share a story about something that happened to me recently over the weekend, and I believe it'll apply and hopefully bless and help some of you. Probably very relatable, but I did feel like it was significant in the way that the Lord came and just kind of taught me something and reminded me of something. So it started in the morning. I woke up, and the first thing on my mind, I heard it kind of just repeating in my heart, was the phrase "hour of visitation." And I just kept hearing this and hearing this. So I'm laying there in bed as I start my day and just processing this phrase. And I was reminded of the passage of scripture. It's found in Luke 19, where Jesus has just entered triumphantly into Jerusalem, riding on a colt. And the crowds are shouting Hosanna, and they're laying down their cloaks and laying palm branches in front of him. And it's this powerful, beautiful scene of him entering into Jerusalem. And yet, interestingly, it says that when Jesus caught eye of the city, he began to burst into tears with uncontrollable weeping over Jerusalem, saying, "If only you could recognize that this day peace is within your reach, but you cannot see it. For the day is soon coming when your enemies will surround you, pressing you in on every side and laying siege to you. They will crush you to pieces and your children too. And when they leave, your city will be totally destroyed. Since you would not recognize God's day of visitation, your day of devastation is coming." And we know that he was prophesying about the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. But I wanted to highlight, because that's where the phrase is found when, well, I believe there's another passage where he tells them, you hypocrites, you can interpret the weather, you can interpret the sky and know that, if whatever it was, red sky in the morning, sailor's warning, right? Red sky at night, sailor's delight kind of thing, where they could look at the signs, look at the weather pattern, and basically interpret it and know what was coming next. But he said, you hypocrites, you can do that, but you don't discern the time. You don't understand the hour that's at hand. And so I wanted to start with that passage to give some context about this experience, because my day started with this phrase, hour of visitation. I began doing some yard work and had a bunch of green waste that I needed to take to the local landfill here. So I loaded up my truck full of yard waste, and I make my way down to the landfill. And I've been here now 4 years, and the green waste area, they call it, has always been in the same spot, always been in the same area. So like the back of my hand, I knew exactly where to go, didn't even have to think about it. And so I get back there and I discover that it's completely gone. I mean, I probably was there a month ago and it's completely changed. It's gone. They had cleared the entire area out. It was unrecognizable. And so confused, I begin to think, maybe I missed a turn. How did I get here? Why does everything look so different? I was like disoriented. And so I began exploring and driving in circles in the landfill here, which is a big area. It's probably at least a square mile or two. And I get lost. And over, I find myself in restricted areas, and I'm having to do U-turns and backtrack and go back and try another road, thinking maybe they moved it over here. Well, it's probably 10 minutes had passed, and I realized I have to just stop and go back to the beginning. I have to go back to the entrance and see where I went wrong, see if there was a sign posted about where it is now, because it definitely was not where it always had been. And so I do. I go back, turn back in, and sure enough, as soon as you pull in, there's a huge obvious sign that says green waste this way, which was not where I normally would turn. And so I finally find it. I make, I get rid of all my yard waste. And as I'm leaving, I kind of just felt like the presence of God come into the truck as I'm processing this whole experience. And I'm thinking to myself, Ryan, you're such an idiot. You just wasted 10, 15 minutes driving in circles. And all the workers there, I'm sure, are watching me drive in circles and pull U-turns with my truck bed full of yard waste. So as I'm driving home, I'm processing this experience, and I'm reminded of the phrase I heard when I woke up that morning, the hour of visitation. And I start thinking about, I missed the sign. I missed the change because I had a preconceived notion. I didn't think I had to be looking for or expecting any type of change. Things had always been this way for 4 years. I knew exactly where to go. I knew where to turn. And so I didn't even have to think about it. But in our walk with God, I think that we tend to find ourselves in the same predicament sometimes, where we get so used to things being a certain way. We get so used to approaching God or experiencing God a certain way, or we get familiar with him and his dealings with us. We may become familiar with the way that he speaks to us or the way that we enter into his presence. Whatever it is, we like to settle. It's human nature. We tend to just settle into comfortability, complacency, familiarity. And it was a strong reminder, a powerful reminder that when God does something new, we can easily miss it. We can easily miss when God wants to shift things and maybe relate to us in a new way or meet us and have new encounters. But if we're not expecting them, if we're not aware enough, we can miss, just like he rebuked the Pharisees. He rebuked Jerusalem, the Israelites, because they didn't know the hour they were in. They didn't know the hour of their visitation. They didn't recognize it. And it's incumbent upon us to know the hour and the season and the times that we're in. And maybe one day I'll do a rapid devotional on the sons of Issachar, which if you're familiar with them, it said that they knew the times. They knew and discerned the hours, the season, the times, and that they knew how to respond, basically. They knew what to do in light of the times that they were living in, the prophetic significance of the hour they were living in. So without kicking that dead horse, I think you get the point. But I suddenly found myself, well, let me go back to this. I came home, and the next day, I believe it was, a good friend of mine, Jamie, came by, and I was relaying this story to him, and the significance of it, I thought I actually had a good grip and understanding of the lesson and kind of what God was trying to show me through it. And he actually had some insight into it that I wasn't seeing at the time. And so I told him the significant part was that I had to stop going in circles and stop trying to figure it out and go back to the beginning. I had to go back to the start, and that's where I saw the sign and realized where I had gotten off course, where I had gotten, lost. And so he said, well, I'm thinking Genesis, the book of Genesis, in the beginning and the garden. So I hadn't seen that in that way yet, because let me share with you, 2.5 years ago, this was my understanding until I had this conversation with Jamie. I'm thinking the beginning of this season of revelatory insight, where about 2.5 years ago, I had a powerful encounter with the Lord and was in an intense season of seeking him and fasting, and something unlocked, something opened for me in the realm of revelatory insight. And I began to read the scriptures, and they would just explode. They'd come alive in a way that they never have before in my life. And I give the analogy of standing under Niagara Falls with a communion cup. is kind of how I feel sometimes when there's just so much insight and revelation coming as I'm in the scriptures, as I'm meditating on them, as I'm reading them, that it's almost more than I can bear and contain, the amount of insight and revelation and understanding that the Lord was giving me. For a good 2.5 years now, I've been in this flow, and to be vulnerable with you, since the end of last year, I began to kind of just feel this flow waning a bit. And as I begin to process why and what's happening, I think it could be a combination of things. Number one being my son Ezra being a toddler now, and he doesn't sleep as much, and he's very, very busy and active and constantly into everything. And it takes so much of my time just keeping him alive, to be honest. He's climbing on things, he's breaking things, he's a wild one. And so that some of that and just some other things that have shifted in my schedule and life and busyness. And so that flow, I've noticed, doesn't come as easily, where I would just, the moment I sat down and opened up the scriptures, it would just come so easily. And so I began to process, like, why? What's going on? Is it me? Maybe it was just for a season. Has this grace lifted? I may not ever know the answer, but just being transparent, I've experienced a little bit of the waning of that. And so I'm thinking, well, if I go back to the beginning when all of this started, I was in a season of fasting, intense seeking, as I said. But Jamie reminded me that in the beginning, going back to the start, if we really think about it, is going back to the garden, going back to the simplicity that Adam and Eve shared with the Father. They lived in perfect relationship with him, in rest. Everything was provided for them in the garden. There was no striving, there was no toiling, and they simply enjoyed intimacy and perfect relationship in close fellowship and intimacy with God. And then the fall occurs, and they're now outside of the garden, and it's unfamiliar. It's not what they were used to. And now they're having to toil and work and strive. And so the lesson is when we get lost and when we find ourselves in a moment or in a season of, I don't have my bearings anymore. What's happened? Everything looks unfamiliar and different. And I was expecting things to continue to be a certain way. And all of a sudden my footing's gone. The carpet's been swept under my feet. We have to remember, if you're experiencing that, if this is relating to you at all, this is your reminder to go back to the beginning, go back to the start, and to the place of sweet, simple fellowship and communion and rest in the garden. That is and always will be our starting place. I remembered at the time of this powerful encounter, as he began sharing this about Genesis and the garden and rest and simplicity, I remembered then that in that season I had been in a place of stillness and rest. The Lord had me under his thumb, so to speak. And I had moved here from Florida, where I was very, very active and very busy in church activities and functions and ministry, on top of balancing and juggling work and school and family. And so to come from that type of pace to here, where we had no church community, I wasn't serving in ministry, I wasn't working anymore, I'm just at home working part-time, taking care of the boys. I was in a season of stillness and rest. And that's really where all of this came from and was birthed out of. So everything, at that time even was in the pandemic, when it first really, when things were shut down. And I was forced into a season of just simplicity and returning to this stillness and quietness. And I experienced so much transformation in that season. So again, if you ever feel like you're in a season of just going in circles, or suddenly you find yourself in unfamiliar territory, you may be in a season where God is doing something new. And this is your reminder to go back to the beginning, go back to the garden, return to the simplicity of being in his presence, return to the simplicity of resting in him. So, he's also Jehovah sneaky, I love to say. He's always up to something. Now, God doesn't change. Jesus Christ the same yesterday, today, and forever. However, he's always doing something new in us. He's always doing something new, and he's never boring. And while we can know his ways, he's not always predictable. And that's something to keep in mind that I needed a reminder of, that, we need to be paying attention for the shifts, for the changes. God works in seasons and times, and kairos, if you're familiar with that term, it's an appointed time. It's a time that is pregnant with prophetic significance. There are divine strategic moments and hours in our life where God's wanting to do something new in you and through you and around you. And so just like the Israelites, when they were in the wilderness, they were guided and led by the pillar of cloud by day and fire by night. And when the cloud moved, they had to, they would blow the horns and the whole camp would pack up and move, and they followed the cloud. It didn't matter whether it was a day, a week, a month, a year. When the cloud moved, they moved. And they could never get too comfortable or familiar with any area. Let's say if it was a year, imagine you're in a place for a year, you feel pretty grounded and established, the territory, you get familiar with it, and suddenly the cloud lifts, and it's, we don't know where we're going, but we're going to follow the cloud and trust him. As I begin to close, Isaiah 43:18 and 19, let me pull it up here. It says, "Do not call to mind the former things or ponder things of the past. Behold, I will do something new. Now it will spring forth. Will you not be aware of it?" Right? Other translations say, do you not perceive it? Do you not see it? Do you not know it? And so God can be moving in a new way, in a new direction, and he's doing something new in our life, and it could be easy to miss. The season, the time, the door could pass us by if we are so stuck in our ways, if we're so stuck in the familiar, in the way that, hey, I've just always done it this way, it's always been this way, and it doesn't matter if it's been 10, 20, 30 years, or just a season of a few months. We have to understand that seasons change, and God is always wanting to do something new in us, right? We go from glory to glory, from faith to faith, from strength to strength. We can never get so settled that we're just comfortable, and we will miss something, as I did, because I just wasn't expecting anything to change. This is how it's always been. I knew where to go. I wasn't even thinking about looking for a sign. And so it's incumbent upon us. We need to be cognizant and aware of these things, of these shifts in the season. Philippians 3:13 and 14 also says something similar, where he said, I may not have achieved or attained to this ultimate, goal of being one with him and reaching this perfection and union with him. But he says, but I know this, and doing this, I forget the past. I leave the past in the past, and I press on towards the goal, the high mark, the prize of Christ. And so we need to have that same attitude where, look, no matter where you are in your walk with him right now, there could be something new and fresh waiting for you that he's wanting to lead you into. And he doesn't want us to miss it. But if we're so consumed in our, the way things currently are, without any room for, hey, possibly maybe there's a different way, or am I missing something that you're wanting to do in my life, God? We know that change is the only real constant, and it's not always comfortable, but we have to let go of the familiar, the comfortable, and not be so stuck in a rut, in our routines and habits and even mindsets, that we can miss the new. So stop and consider, maybe the cloud has moved. Maybe he's doing something new. And it's a new day and a new hour and a new era that's upon you. Will you not perceive it? Can you not see it? Will you not discern it? The Pharisees were experts in the law. They knew all the prophecies about the Messiah. They were looking earnestly for the Messiah because of the Roman occupation and the sufferings of that time frame. They were looking for a Messiah, a Christ who would come in militarily and overthrow Rome and restore Israel, restore their kingdom. And so they completely missed Christ, the Messiah, the fulfillment of the prophecies. He's the one sent from God, but they had such a different mindset and an understanding and a preconceived notion that they missed him standing right in front of them. And all the signs were there, all the miracles, the wonders, the prophecy being fulfilled before their very eyes. And yet they missed it. They did not perceive or recognize their hour of visitation. And so that can sound a little intense and harsh, and that's not my intention today. In fact, I want to speak hope and this faith to be stirred up that a new season has come upon us. And I believe this will apply to many of you, as I believe it does for me as well, that there's a new hour of opportunity, a new open door. And we need to be aware and be looking for the signs, the subtleties, the change, and not miss our hour of visitation. So I'm going to continue this conversation in another video, part 2 continuance, because there's more to this that I want to delve into. So that's enough for now. I love you. God loves you. I'm excited about what he's doing in my life. And I hope you are too, because God has good plans and he's up to something good. So be blessed. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.